live segment with London Transport Museum. London Transport Museum are the world's leading museum of urban transport. And this historic institution will be leading a live presentation alongside a preview of one of their hidden London virtual tours.
All right, I think we're live.
Hello. So I'm Chris, and this is...
I'm Sidney Holloway. Thank you for having us, guys. We're really excited to show you a bit about what our museum does. Got a bit of a little presentation for you today, so hopefully you'll enjoy and learn a little bit about what we do at the museum and learn a little bit about our Hidden London programme as well. Chris, do you want to add anything before we get...
Yeah, so Sidney and I worked at the museum for quite a long time. We have helped set up and run the Hidden London programme, written the Hidden London book, and also run Hidden London Hangouts and virtual tours. So that's what we're here to show you a bit of today. So we've got a presentation and part of the virtual tour as well, which we'll share with you now. So we'll just go into the presentation deck.
So many of you might be familiar with the London Transport Museum, but you might not be. But as we were being introduced, it's the world's leading museum in transport in the world. It's located in Covent Garden, where only about 2% of our actual collection is located. So it's on the southern side of the piazza in Covent Garden, and that's what it looks like on the outside there. Now, if we go to the next slide, Chris, I'll let you explain a bit more.
So on the inside, we have a large collection of vehicles, as you might expect, but also art, design, and social history as well. We also have an absolutely fabulous shop there with lots of really, really good product that relates to the collection, as well as things like our decommissioned originals range, which where you can buy real bits of the underground system. So the museum itself is really just the tip of the iceberg. As Sidney mentioned, we only have 2% of the collection there, and 98% of it is down at our depot at Acton Town. But as well as that, we consider the entire transport system part of our collection, and our Hidden London programme is really the cornerstone of that, and allows us to open up places which usually are inaccessible to the public for people to be able to go and explore with us. Sidney, do you want to talk us through a few things that we can see there?
Yeah, so the Hidden London programme, as Chris was saying, opens up disused and closed spaces on the London Underground network. So we have 8 different sites that you could, well, hopefully in the summer, you can finally start visiting again once everyone's been vaccinated and ready to go. But we have 8 different sites, and some of them you can see in the images there. Now, I'm in a lot of those photos. That's just because normally when we need to take any kind of promo shots or whatnot, it tends to be just whoever's in the office at the time, and so that's why it's always me. But you can see there's an old photograph of Aldwych just there in the top left-hand corner. Then we have the overrun tunnel of Aldwych in the right-hand corner. Then we have the disused platform at Aldwych in the bottom left corner, and then we have the disused passageways of Piccadilly Circus in the bottom right. So these are just 2 of our 8 different sites that we have across the network. But as I mentioned earlier, we of course haven't been able to conduct any real physical tours over the last year because of the pandemic, and because these spaces are, well, as you would imagine, very tight, and you have to be in quite close quarters with other people a lot of the time. So we of course had to shut the program down when the pandemic hit. However, it was really important for us to keep going throughout the pandemic, to bring something to our audiences that we might not have been able to do otherwise, and that's how we came up with the virtual tour program. And maybe Chris, do you want to explain a little bit about what the virtual tour program is?
Yeah, sure. So we're quite a tenacious bunch of people at the museum, and after a month or 2 of not being able to run physical tours, we thought, well, we're not going to be defeated. Let's think about doing virtual ones. And what that did was allow us to open up loads of places which are not suitable for physical tours. They're either too cramped, they're utterly inaccessible to general public, or they just sort of so spread out across the site, it would be hard to put a decent narrative story together across 5 or 6 parts of the site. All of these things work really well as virtual tours. So by early summer of last year, we were running virtual tours, and people in this country and around the world were able to go and visit these places from their sofa, fully accessible, no age limits, and also slightly cheaper than our physical tours. So we've discovered a whole new audience of people this way, and been able to open up a whole new load of sites using virtual tours. So what Cindy and I thought would be good is to give you a show through of one of the least accessible sites. Very few people have ever been to this site. Cindy and I had been there a number of times in our time at the museum, but one that public tours have never been possible, and that is Brompton Road Station on the Piccadilly line. So let's hop in, and this is this was Brompton Road Station in Knightsbridge, and I'm going to hand over to Cindy to start the tour.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't really know about Brompton Road because it's been such a long time since it closed, and because there's very little that actually remains on the surface of the station. So a lot of the time when I do tell people about Brompton Road, they think I'm talking about Knightsbridge, but it isn't Knightsbridge. There was another station in between South Kensington and Knightsbridge Station, which opened, as you can see in this photograph here, on the 15th of December 1906 as a part of the Great Northern Piccadilly and Brompton Railway. It's a beautiful kind of typical Leslie Green building. Some of you might be fans of his architecture, but you'll recognize this building as an underground structure, and it was kind of in the same architectural vein as other stations at that time, you know, on the Piccadilly, on the Bakerloo, and on the Charing Cross branch of the Northern Line. Now, the reason why this might come as a sort of a bit of a surprise to you is because, as I said before, this facade is no longer on Brompton Road itself. There's only very little that remains. Now, if we go to the next slide.
And I'll just do that by way of this notification, just to remind people that the images and the videos and so on are all museum's copyright, so please don't record them in any way. Here we go. Let's move on. Oh, that's all right. It's taking a moment.
Oh, that always happens, doesn't it? But just whilst we're waiting for the next slide, so the station is was between South Kensington and Knightsbridge, and because of that, it never really served anywhere properly. It was right next to the London Oratory, and it was close to some of the museums, namely the Victoria and Albert Museum, but really it sort of didn't serve a kind of main area as much as the two neighbouring stations did. And by the 1930s, when the Piccadilly line was being extended out further, sort of out into the suburbs, they wanted to close a few stations down to speed up the line. And we've dropped out of share screen. We
have. Not sure why. Do you want to carry on? We'll just see if we can troubleshoot that.
So, and so by 1932 to 34, they were actually closing a lot of the early Piccadilly line stations down. And finally, in 1934, they closed Brompton Road down, and really, had no intentions of kind of using the site for anything at all. That was until the Second World War, when it came in very handy to have a closed station right in the heart of town. But as I said before, there's very little that remains of the actual site, and the above ground parts that remain were actually sold to the Ministry of, sold from the Ministry of Defence to, oh, there we go, to a private individual a few years back. So there is no way to access Brompton Road from the surface. The only way you can go to the station is either by going in the driver's cab of a train, or you go to, or you have to walk down the tunnel during engineering hours in the night. So that's what we did to get some photographs for the virtual tours. Now,
okay, so just to pick up, so there we go. Here's a view of the surviving bit of Brompton Road. This is kind of the back of the station, just off the main part of Brompton Road. And one of the lovely things about doing this from the museum is, of course, we get to raid the toy box for all of the, not just the images that you can take of what it looks like today, but how it used to look, our diagrams, our drawings, the artworks that relate to the site. One of the most fascinating and useful things to be able to look at is the diagrams that show you what the station is like underneath the ground. So here we've got a view with Brompton Road itself kind of running over these two platforms here, and the blue lines are the tracks, the track beds. The station building itself just out to the side, as City was saying, Brompton Oratory is kind of over here on the top left. You can see it was made up with two lift shafts, a stair shaft, and then these passageways which lead back over bridges, over the eastbound track here at the top, and then via stairs, and then spreading out onto the platforms. So that was the way into the station, and this was the way out of the station. All of these Leslie Green stations were designed to be one way, so you go in through one side of the lift and you come out the other, and most of them were anyway. So that gives you a general idea of the arrangement of the station, quite a simple one. And what we're going to do now is, in a moment, just hop into what the station looks like now, or at least 6 months ago when we went and shot some first-person footage there. We're going to parachute in to this part of the station just here, and then we're going to go and have a little explore up this passageway, see what happened to this staircase when it was repurposed in the Second World War as a secret bunker, which we'll explain a little bit more about in a moment. But if you can just put that in your head, platform here, stairs we're going to go up, passageway here, spiral stairs, and then this lift shaft will be important too. Okay, well, what we'll do is we'll just have a look at one last image before we pop into that other part of the presentation. And City, do you want to just talk about this briefly?
So this is just the frontage of the station, as we saw earlier. It's a little bit of a clearer photograph, but it's just lovely to see some of the details. So we think this is shot around about the time that the station opened. And as we said, it was never really heavily used. It didn't serve anywhere properly. The area around it was very affluent and largely residential. And so really by about 2 years after the station opened, they started reducing services to it. And again, by 1934, they decided to close the station down. And they actually closed it on the same day as the brand new escalators of Knightsbridge Station opened, which in fact kind of encroached on the station's kind of catchment area. So that's why the station closed. And as we said before, the site was kind of completely left to be empty, to become a ventilation shaft, really. And then when it was looking likely that war was brewing in Europe, the site was sold to the Ministry of Defence, which converted it into a secret bunker for the purposes of air raid protection during the Second World War. So what we're looking at here, and I might just hand this over to Chris, but this is one of the platforms that's been converted. What we're looking at there is a wall that's been erected that separates this area, i.e. the platform from the running of the Piccadilly line, which of course runs past every few minutes when there's a good service.
Yeah, so behind that wall is the eastbound track of the Piccadilly line. Every time you go through that part of the Piccadilly line, you're going through a former secret wartime bunker. There are a few clues as to what you can, as to its former use on the wall. The yellow and the green wall is a part of the wartime paintwork. The bit beyond it that's kind of a pinkish grey almost, you might notice there's a screen in the far distance there on the right-hand side of the photo, and that was a briefing room within the site, and that screen was there for a projector in that briefing room. You can see it's really unglamorous use today on the floor, full of bags full of ballast that's been taken out of the tracks of the Piccadilly line, because it's used by permanent way teams to maintain the Piccadilly site, Piccadilly line today. So it has a fairly unglamorous life as a ventilation shaft and a store at the moment. But we're going to go and have a look at the parts of its former glory now. So we'll just talk as we take this journey. So we're just going to turn around now and look back towards the stairs. You get a glimpse of the really rather beautiful old tile work, the colour and the pattern was unique to each of those 50 or so stations that were built in this design. And we find ourselves leading up to a doorway here. I'm just going to briefly pause that and come out of screen share, as it looks like I've got some slight video blocking issues going there. So excuse me while I just have to come out and redo. I think we just had a bit of a connection glitch. Let's reset everything. Do apologise. Hopefully that's all back. Okay, there we go. That's a bit better.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so we've now just come to the top of the stairs, and this is the bridge which goes over the westbound Piccadilly line. And as we come through here, we can see these modifications around the doorways. This brickwork isn't part of the original station. You can see air ducts, for example, on the left there, and just above your head to the right. These are all signs that this is not a regular station. It's had some modifications made. And we're now through this doorway coming to the next part, which is the lift shaft lobby. And just ahead of us, you might be able to see a gas filter stack on the left-hand side. But we're going to turn towards the spiral stairs. And here you've got a bit of the original station signage survives to the stairs. And our first glimpse here that this is a military bunker, the armory.
Mm-hmm. Really
now these stairs are quite unusual as well, aren't they, Siddy?
Yeah, well, they're really amazing because we actually hadn't been into this part before we shot the footage for the virtual tour. And what amazed us is that it's also, as well as being a spiral stairs, it's also used as an access point to the different rooms that were erected inside the lift shaft itself. So the lift shaft was separated into 4 different rooms, all built on top of one another in the abandoned lift shaft. And here you can see is number 3. So these rooms were gun operations rooms, and they coordinated all of the anti-aircraft firepower of London during the Second World War. So these were operations rooms plotting out and planning how to effectively, protect London and the southeast from the air raids and from the Luftwaffe. So here we can see still it's in remarkable condition, and it's still remains there, kind of sleeping and undisturbed for since the Second World War. So it's really quite extraordinary to be able to see.
That is worth saying, that room that you were just in controlled the skies over the north of London throughout the Second World War. So that was the room which was covering the north. The one below it covered the south. And then one we're going into now, GOR2, was the military intelligence room, basically a room full of lots of telephones. And we're just going through a double gas airlock there, those 2 sets of doors to protect against potential gas attack. You can see the acoustic tiling on the wall there to try and keep the sound less echoey while people are on telephones. And we're just going to head back out now onto the stairs to go right the way up to the top. which is where Gun Operations Room 1 was based.
And just on this little taster, we're just sort of showing you one part of the station, but there are so many others that are really quite remarkable, and so many stories of the people that worked there throughout the war, and how, you know, what the conditions were like, what kind of things they were dealing with, you know, how day-to-day operations worked. Now, we would be up to 120 people working in this station during the war every day. You know, how would they even cope with that? And those are the things that we kind of take our audience through on the virtual tour, and it's really quite, you know, so many secrets really that get revealed that we certainly kind of didn't know about before we started properly researching this the tour itself.
One of the really nice things, again, is our collection allows us to be able to decode these spaces. So this diagram in our collection, for example, shows that complex air duct system that we've been walking through, and make sense of where it was going, which rooms were important, and how they were used. And also other photos that we have in the collection give us an idea as to what the spaces looked like before they were abandoned. So this is GOR1, which is the gun operations room at the very top of the lift shaft. And in this, you've got the obvious things. You've got the team there working around a dais to mark the positions of aircraft in the skies, their last known positions. You have the commanders on the left with an enormous bank of telephones to allow them to talk to anybody in the site or off the site to coordinate the battle. You can see a pair of Lamson tubes in the background there, just so they could zip messages around the site in vacuum pipes in little capsules. But the most important things are the two screens on the back wall. One of them had lights on it, which would light up to show which anti-aircraft batteries were firing to try and protect against enemy aircraft. And the other one, the one that's lit up, is a truly state-of-the-art piece of equipment. That was a live TV relay screen showing live radar data for the skies above London, which took its feed put in by the BBC, a cable running down the Piccadilly line from the radar sender to that screen. So the commanders really had the most amazing view of the scene of battle over London and how to respond to it with aircraft fire and people on the ground to tackle blazes and bombs. So a truly remarkable site which survived there well through the Cold War, serving London, and is now retired and, as City mentioned, sold off to a private individual. There is no street access to this site, which is why it's so special. Only two ways to get there. One, in the cab of a train, two, with a track license at night. And that is why this can't be a public tour and why it's so great to be able to share it in a virtual arena. Anything else you want to add, City?
No, I think that's it. I think there's just a few little bits that we're going to share about the museum before that's our time.
Sure.
So we've got the museum reopening soon. Finally, we're getting back on our feet after having been closed for about 260 days over the last year or so. Now, a ticket to the museum itself gives you unlimited daytime access to the museum for a whole year. And of course, because we've been closed for such a long time, the museum is, of course, struggling as many other institutions. So we do welcome everyone to kind of book their tickets in advance, plan a brilliant day out in London when we can finally start going out again. And really about 80% of our income comes directly from our ticket sales and things like that. So we're really trying to encourage people to come and have a look at our fantastic museum that we love so much. We've done a lot of upgrades to the museum itself. Chris, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so our very popular and indeed award-winning Hidden London exhibition has been extended. So that is there on the top left. So we potted some of these experiences of going to disused sites into a temporary exhibition. So that will be on. We've got great play areas for children. We've got new exhibits in a new war gallery. We've got new content, including the first Rainbow Crossing, that was pioneered in London and now appears in many Ride with Pride events around the world. And we've also got new engineering displays and a general upgrade to the interpretation across the site, as well as our ever popular shop. As well as that, there are some things that you can do without even going to the museum. Siddy, do you want to tell us about what we do on the Hangouts?
Yeah, so we also have a YouTube series called the Hidden London Hangouts. You'll see our faces on there, mine and Chris. We're part of the Fab Four that deliver that program. So we put out an episode every single week. We launch them at 6 p.m. every Saturday. Not today, but we will be coming back next week. And we have over 109,000 views, and we take a topic each week and talk about, say, a station. We've talked about maquette. We've gone to other disused places. We have a lot of fun on there. And so if you're interested in this sort of stuff and you want to just have a good, spend 40 minutes looking at something interesting, I highly recommend you check out the Hidden London Hangouts. And we do a live chat every Saturday as well, to kind of chat to people who like the same things that we do. So do join us next time, next Saturday.
Worth saying as well, these are of course free, so it's a way to have a taster of these places. So if you're thinking about a virtual tour and you want to have a bit of a peek inside these places, then the Hangouts are a good way to do that. I think the Island Trains episode, the one about the 38 stock being withdrawn on the Isle of Wight, is one of our most popular ones. We've just done York Road, which again is a site that can't ever be a physical tour, but we just did that last week. So do check those out. We now have a Patreon channel as well with that. So if people want to get further behind the scenes and chat with us, then you can do that there. So only a few more. Our depot, very well worth a visit. A lot of our big stuff, the rolling stock, is down there. So we've got everything with steel wheels and rubber wheels down there, as well as a huge artwork collection that's bigger than most galleries in London could boast. And also we have a lot of the real things that are available for sale, things like disused signage and maquette we have there when we have the museum open. We have some offers for you as well. So if you'd like to try one of our virtual tours, then you can enjoy 20% off one of our virtual tours using this code, virtual20. And if you haven't already experienced the Routemaster at the museum, then that is our unique to the museum Routemaster cocktail, which we serve in our canteen whenever the museum is open. So I think that's everything from us. Thank you very much for having us along. That's the end of our presentation. So I hope you've enjoyed that little look inside behind the scenes. And Siddy, anything you want to add before we sign off?
No, I don't think so. Are you coming out of the screen sharing so everyone can see our faces to say goodbye? Yeah, no, really, I think all I would like to add is, thank you so much for having us. We do have, a wealth of stuff online that really, we're very, very proud of, and we think is a whole lot of fun. So if you're looking for something to do and want to support the museum, I wholeheartedly recommend you kind of look at some of the stuff that we've got out there. And of course, come and visit if you are able to, once we are reopened in May and later on in the summer.
Hopefully see some of you in the chat room on a future Hidden London Hangout. But thanks very much for having us here today.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. Have a great one.